In this video, it is the driving part of the comparison between Australian and American Fords, both 2001. This is my Australian Ford Fairmont, which Matt of Furious Driving is going to be driving, fittingly enough, and I'm about to experience a Ford Crown Vic for the very first time. Oh boy, I'm looking forward to this. Alright, so here we go, my first time in a Ford Crown Vic with that 4.6 litre overhead cam modular V8 engine. Mr. Furious is getting a photo. Quick, because Mr. Furious is a photographer of some standing who I've used several times in my magazine days. But here we go. Yeah, lots of beeping. I think it's beeping because I haven't got my seatbelt on, so we better do something about that or it's going to be complaining. I may have to slightly move my microphone. No, we're going to be good. It's fine. So yeah, that's a very smooth V8. It hasn't quite got the burble I expect, perhaps because I spend too much time watching Cletus McFarland, who sadly tends to mostly destroy Crown Vics these days, it seems. Parking brake is already off, the release is down there. Pop it into drive to display just ahead there. And away we go. Bye, Betty! So Matt of Furious Driving is going to be driving my Ford Fairmont. It's the first time anyone other than my friends Eddie and Bernie have driven Betty on UK roads. So yeah, so far it's feeling very big, very strange because of course it's left-hand drive, but very slow and wafty. Quite a lot of road noise coming through. Whether that's because we got that body on frame situation or a separate chassis, to use the more European terms, I don't know. And that's had to modify the indicators to suit European conditions. Oh yeah, that sounds decently meaty. Come on, get out of the way, the popo's coming through. Oh, that's brisk. But then, unsurprisingly, we get to 70 miles an hour and it feels very, very wafty indeed. That's very comfortable. There's no rev counter. Apparently the police don't need to know what speed their engine's doing. I suppose technically you don't really need a rev counter with automatic, but I still like to know these things. But certainly I would say the engine is not doing a huge number of revs at this sort of speed. Steering, quite twitchy. This is the latter end of having a steering box on these. I think for 2003 there were a number of chassis improvements that included rack and pinion steering. Let's pay attention at the roundabout. People not signalling, thank you very much for your help at this difficult time. It actually feels fairly stiff. I think it feels a bit wobbly at the same time. That's quite impressive. So fortunately we have actually got a limited slip diff on the back of this, so it does hook up a little better than my Ford Fairmont, I think. Yeah, it's weird to think that most of the 81,000 miles this car has done were as a detective spec police car. You still see the holes in the dashboard from where radios would have been fitted, and no doubt some guns as well, because America. Yeah, that ride's a little crude in places, but I can't really boast that my Fairmont's better in that regard, necessarily. It feels much older fashioned inside, I think. The Fairmont is very contemporary by comparison, but these big old seats are very, very comfortable. Actually, I'm going to slow down to about 55, the double nickel, and then accelerate. That's quite nice. But I think, like the Fairmont, really you drive one of these with the minimum of effort. You're not trying hard because you don't need to try hard. In terms of power output, I think the civilian spec of these was only about 10 brake horsepower more than my Fairmont, despite 0.6 litres, or roughly a 2CV engine size difference between the two vehicles. But similarly, it's more about the torque, really. You don't have to rev it because you've got a fat load of torque all low down. We're driving up a really steep hill up the A23 at the moment, and that Kia Sportage has slowed down and is noticing it. We are not. This is absolutely fine. So I've got voltage, I've got fuel, I've got temperature of the coolant and temperature of the oil as well. Quite important, because I guess if you're sat there idling for ages, oils are going to get a bit warm. Yeah, this is very dignified way to travel. It kind of has to be, because America's so vast, rather like Australia, your cars have to be able to just eat up the miles with the minimum of fuss and effort. Don't think you get cruise control on a police spec by the look of it. It's all a bit simple. And while I think it's a 4-speed gearbox, I see I've got drive 2 and 1, so it doesn't look like I can hold third gear. Oh no, because we've got an overdrive off. So I think that's effectively a lockout on 4th gear. Right, we are going to take this next left. I think this is going to be a tight, twisty road. This is going to be exactly what you don't want to be driving down in a huge American car. Let's test the brakes. Oh yeah. A bit more confident, inspiring than the old Fairmont, I think, there. And we'll go to warning lid. How's that for a name? I think this is struggling for traction quite easily, just pulling away around these parts. Oh yeah, this is a tight, twisty road. It's exactly the sort of road you don't want to be on in an enormous American car. You can hear it thumping along the cat's eyes. So very much hoping nothing big comes along the other way. We'd better do a windscreen wiper test. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's... The blades seem a little tired. The blade, you see the park up? Oh, and then fold away. That's lovely. Just like a Lexus LS400. Good overlap, no triangle of doom. So I will say that's a very pleasing wiper performance. Yeah, it's getting a bit bumpy along here, and you can kind of hear the suspension working. But it's actually eating, I think this is doing a better job of eating up the bumps. I will point out, for reasons of fairness, that my Fairmont has done an awful lot more miles. 310,000 kilometers, which is, yeah, it's a lot. But yeah, there are a surprising number of Crown Vics here in the UK. I encountered some at a car meet last year. Oh, they're all very quaint and lovely, isn't it? Because people over here love American police cars for some reason. Probably because most of our police cars don't have V8 engines. In fact, I don't think any of them do anymore. Gone are the glory days of the Rover SD1 police cars. Yeah, it does feel a little lurchy. The suspension is not the most refined. I would say that feels very American. I would say the Fairmont is a little tauter in terms of handling. It's no sports car. Not at all, in fact. This is very, very likeable. And it doesn't feel as out of place as I expected. Here we are driving around beautiful Sussex, I think. We're on the Sussex-Surrey border around these parts. And this is, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. But yeah, it's incredible that these cars were built until late 2011. I think 2012 was the last sales, because it's such an old-fashioned design in so many ways. But they did keep evolving the platform, the Panther platform, all the way through from I think it was the early 80s right through to 2011. Oh, in the cat's eyes again. Can you tell? Whoa, okay, that's, yeah, it's losing its cool a bit. But the way it deals with really bad bumps, and I've hit quite a few, I've barely noticed them. So it's definitely not all bad. It's just obviously fairly old school technology here. Now, another interesting tidbit: this fine American police car wasn't built in America. So I'm saying it's an American Ford, but actually they were built in Canada, which is very close to America, to be fair. Yeah, that's pretty brisk acceleration, quite revvy acceleration, with very light throttle pressure. As Matt's probably discovering, the Fairmont is much more relaxing in its throttle response, possibly because I keep it in economy mode for a desperate attempt at fuel economy. Speaking of which, we think both cars are probably fairly even. On a run, you might nudge 30 miles to the gallon. That's Imperial. Obviously not American gallons, they're a fair bit smaller. Yeah, maybe not so bad. For such a big car with such a big engine, I think 30 mpg is pretty impressive. The Rover 800 2-litre fastback I owned a few years ago, that would do 30 mpg. So yeah, these big old beasts are surprisingly economical, I think. But obviously, if you start enjoying yourselves, if you start driving up hills, because they're just so big, so much weight, fuel economy is going to drive all the way down to below 20, I would suspect, if you're really having some fun. Let's just have a quick time out to have a look at the outside of the Ford Crown Vic, even though I did a more detailed report in my chat with Furious Driving. It is a big car. It is over 5 meters long, and the weight is getting on for 2 tons. Despite the looks, it actually has a separate chassis. It has a live rear axle. So despite being built in 2001, it's very, very old school indeed. But it's a genuine police interceptor, but a detective car, which is why it's this subtle metallic green. And I love it all the more for that. There are so many police replica Crown Vics over here, but the important detail is this one, police interceptor. That is a specification that came from the factory. You've got this in police form. It's got loads of extra wiring, got cloth front seats, it's got vinyl rears, it's got a slightly tweaked engine, much improved cooling system. So there's an awful lot going on to make this a better package for police use. They also did taxi versions, so that's the same as my Ford Fairmont or Falcon. They were very popular as taxis in Australia. These were very popular as taxis in America, especially New York. Yeah, it's a really comfortable driving position. The seat's actually quite firm. I was expecting sort of softer seats perhaps, but not a bit of it. They are yeah, firm but comfortable in a way German seats aren't. They're just firm. Yeah, needless to say, this feels worlds apart from the Fairmont in overall feel. It feels American in the same way the Fairmont feels Australian. So it's so good that such cars existed, because these days globalization, everything is becoming more standardized, and frankly half the fun is being engineered out of these cars. But an awful lot of these cars are now coming out of service. So there are auctions in America where there are hundreds of these for sale, but obviously as production ended best part of 10 11 years ago, you need to be quick. That is not an endless supply of cars, especially as Cletus McFarlane seems to be smashing an awful lot of them up on a regular basis at his Freedom factory, which I cannot really complain about because I find his channel actually very, very interesting. I'm not sure why. It's not my cars, it's not my treatment of cars, but I'm entirely addicted. He is the reason I was so keen to try one of these cars for myself. Oh, should we really give it some at this national speed limit? Oh, Mr. BMW, we have caught you up. I will say, as much as I love the Intex Straight 6 in my Ford Fairmont for its lovely lazy power delivery, it doesn't sound as good as a V8 engine. That is a supremely American soundtrack. Although, you know, the Australians love their V8s as well. But the Aussies also developed that original Ford 6-cylinder engine from the 1960s into a really good all-round unit by the time my Fairmont was built. But yeah, I just love that two Fords built in 2001 to be big, comfortable, sort of cruisy type vehicles can be so very different to drive. It's far more than just the steering wheel position that is a difference between these two cars. I will say the interior build quality is a bit awful, a bit cheap and nasty American. The Americans not very good at interior plastics, but yeah, overall this has been well worth the wait. I'm really enjoying this. Now, a downside to both cars from a practical point of view is that I can't easily turn off the camera at this point because you're miles away, so I'm gonna have to go and pull over to yeah, be able to get on with this. Well, that was a very interesting experience driving this former American police car here in the UK. Well worth the wait. I would gladly drive one of those again. I think that is a lovely car to drive. Ideal family transport. Does it make any sense to import that car? Not really, but I can't talk, can I? I imported this Ford Fairmont from the other side of the world. But yeah, I'm just reveling in the differences. I think each is lovable for its own reasons, but it'll be very interesting to see how Matt Furious Driving is getting on with my Fairmont. So do go and check out his channel for his report. But otherwise, I shall say thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut stores. We have 2 of them at hubnut.org, one for hoodies and one for t-shirts, mugs, blah 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 blah. And I shall see you in a future video. Farewell. By the way, this cup holder is to Mr. Furious Driving's own design. And with this amount of gaffer tape, he's very, very Hubnut. After all, where else are you meant to rest your tea?